I'm John Newstreet, President and CEO of the Kissimmee Osceola County Chamber of Commerce, where we are day in and day out champions for business and community. And today we have a very special guest who has been a great friend of the Chamber of Commerce and to our community, a member of the Florida House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike LaRosa. And so Mike's going to come up on screen and have a conversation today about what he's done in the Florida House of Representatives. One of his roles currently as he leaves the legislature is as chairman of the Commerce Committee, so a big, important job in leadership. And he was just recently announced as a member of the Public Service Commission, which is another huge job with statewide implications on you and me. So we'll hear from him on both of those roles, and excited to have you, Mike. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Absolutely. John, thanks for having me. I look forward to it and into our conversation.
Yes, sir. So we'll lead off with what maybe looking back, and you spent 8 years in the legislature and had quite a run all the way up to Commerce Chair. So I'm curious, first and foremost, what you're most proud of, and while you have the floor, maybe some of the frustrations or the greatest frustration you experienced while in the legislature.
Sure. You know, I'd have to start by saying thank you. You know, I'm most proud of just the opportunity to be able to serve our community. You know, I didn't enter into any normal path of what a typical public servant would ultimately go through. I kind of went through some turbulent times to be elected, and you know, our community really had to put a lot of faith behind me, not knowing me all that well in that first election. So you know, I certainly got to start there and thank the community. It's been an absolute honor. I can't believe that 8 years have already passed. So much has happened. Our community has grown so much, and hopefully it's a better place today than it was 8 years ago when I started. I certainly have seen some of the fruits of our labor starting to come through, and you know, starting to encourage more small businesses. Of course, unemployment was at an all-time low before this pandemic. This pandemic, of course, has changed everything, but certainly things were on the right track. Our economy was flowing pretty nicely here in the state of Florida. So very proud of that. Very proud to contribute. I was, of course, built my way up to become the Commerce Chairman, which was an absolute honor. You know, humbled by the opportunity to be able to serve in that role, which oversaw a lot of business activity, oversaw almost all regulations specifically to our business community. And you know, dealt with a lot of insurance issues that are truly handcuffing our state, handcuffing our constituents, and of course handcuffing our businesses. So of course tried to plow through those and reduce those and take on those challenges as they came through. But I'll tell you, you know, part of the maybe the most frustrating part looking back 8 years is that you know, there's not a whole lot of time, right? So you got to move extremely quickly. So you typically enter into a session with an agenda, things you want to accomplish, things you want to tackle, and many times only a small percentage of those ultimately come out at the end of the day. It's the positive and the negative that happens with term limits. Things move very quickly. Your time, you know, does expire. I always said to myself, it's kind of an old football term that we used playing football was, at the end of the fourth quarter, you got to look back and you got to feel that you left everything out on the field. And if you do, that's satisfying. And I'm grateful that I can look back now and entering here into my last few weeks of service in my role as a legislator. I truly do believe that I've left everything out on the field. So sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating where you can't tackle everything you ultimately wanted to bring down or open up. But I'm looking back and certainly satisfied by what we did and how we did it.
Well, we're proud of you and grateful for your sacrifice. I mean, you leave your family, you leave your friends and your workplace to go to Tallahassee to do this work during session. And so in a way, thankful it's only a part-time job, even though it's so much more. So we want to appreciate all your sacrifice and the family that supported you as we tried to along the way. I did want to kind of follow up on the Commerce Department. You talked about liability there for a little bit. So it sounds like there won't be a special session before you leave the legislature. They'll probably wait for the new legislature to sit. And so maybe you can confirm that. And because of that, I guess there's really no activity within your committee or the legislature on business liability, but we did have Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Petronis on our webcast a couple of weeks ago. And I know he's very fervent on trying to address that along with the federal government to make sure there are protections in place for businesses through this pandemic, even if they're time limited for the case now where we can survive and open up and get back to normal. So did you see some of that before you left? And is there any outlook going forward from your perspective on business liability?
Absolutely. I'll start with the first comment. There doesn't look to be a special session coming, although I will hold in reserve the fact that anything, of course, can happen. With a few months before the new legislature would ultimately be brought in. We always got to be on our toes and always got to be ready. I know, 4 or 5 years ago, we experienced, 3 special sessions during a summer period where, we'd, close out the week on a Friday, here at home. And then, late Sunday night, we were getting a notice that we'd be coming back the following week. So always, of course, on our toes ready, always following things throughout. So even though session may be over and concluded, that doesn't mean that our job in Tallahassee necessarily ends, especially as a chairman. For us in the Commerce Committee and in our world, insurance rates are extremely important. So of course that evolves over time. We may tackle the problems during sessions, but making sure that reports are coming back as necessary, reviewing decisions that are made by OIR, Office of Insurance Regulations, and what their future forecast ultimately is important. That happens sometimes on a month-to-month or a quarterly basis. So of course we're looking at now what has happened, post, or what to expect post-pandemic, and really what happened through the pandemic. Of course, insurance rates are an incredible important part of that. You mentioned liability. That is probably one of the scariest unknowns for businesses moving forward, right? So how do we give businesses the comfort to safely reopen our economy, reopen our society without having the potential haunting behind them that someone may come after them for something that wasn't truly their fault. As tort reform is an important element to make sure that we continue to flourish our business community. And I expect that we're going to look back and say, hey, there are some things that we can ultimately do as a legislature moving forward to encourage the quicker reopening of things. So I certainly encourage our legislature coming in here in November to take a deep look and see what can we do to encourage businesses to kind of remove that fear as best as possible. Of course, liability is important, but at the end of the day, we shouldn't have unnecessary liabilities that could ultimately turn into lawsuits when we're not truly trying to protect a consumer, but just trying to make attorneys or trial attorneys pockets fat. So I certainly encourage the fact that there needs to be something that we look at. We're currently kind of assessed what's been happening. We haven't really seen a whole lot of activity just yet, but of course this is all still new upon us, and we'll see as we enter into the reopening phases as that continues over here into the fall and into the spring of next year.
Great. I guess one final question related to the legislature. You are still on the state payroll. You have staff assisting you and our constituents. So I know folks are still kind of hurting on unemployment, and there are some possible grants out there. So just want to remind folks, and maybe you could speak to it, that your office is open and there to help, and a great resource. I know you've helped some of my members and folks through the process. So whether you're an employer or an employee or unemployed, there's a lot of help that you can get through the state legislator's office. So you want to just talk briefly to that they're still working hard, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we appreciate you pointing that out. I was expecting, of course, to come out of session and start a transition plan and not necessarily have to kind of ramp up something that we weren't expecting, but we're fine. We're ready to take on those challenges. My staff has probably been working over these last 4 or 5 months harder than they ever have been. Part of it is the unknown territory of kind of what to expect. We're all aware of the unemployment situation that's starting to erode a little bit as far as the unemployment rate. But there are, like you said, there are still a lot of folks that are hurting, and my staff is ready and on call, literally 24/7, ready to assist. We started with hundreds, if not, it was actually, I believe, thousands of unemployment claims that came to our office. Of course, we're not the ones that collect unemployment claims, but we do try to assist when there are problems. Unfortunately, we saw those start to peak in April and in May, and still dealing with some cases, and of course still dealing with some new cases. So my staff is ready and willing. They are there ready to help out. Maybe at the bottom of the screen, you can put our email address or our phone number or something that we can attach to this so folks have all the right information to go to. But yeah, no, they'll be working up until the last day that we are in control of House District 42 and ready and willing to help all of our constituents. So yeah, certainly if you guys need anything, whether it be unemployment related or not, please reach out. There are a lot of new grants that both DEO and other agencies are working through. And if there's something out there that can help you, or you just need some advice or some suggestions, or just kind of a direction of where to go, we certainly want to be an asset to you in that regard. So feel free to reach out to us.
And we will have that information included, of course. And so thanks for those comments. We'll wrap up this 15 minutes with a look at where you're going. Public Service Commission, can you talk to the audience about what kind of falls under the umbrella of the PSC, why that's great that you got the job for our local community, and maybe some of your goals while in that post?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, humbled by the confidence that the governor has to select me to serve on the Public Service Commission. So just kind of a quick overview. There are 5 public service commissioners in the state of Florida, of course, run there out of Tallahassee, but oversees the entire state when it comes to any regulated utility. Probably most predominant or most common to most folks is our utilities. I'm sorry, is our energy. So whether you have Duke Power, FP&L, or one of the municipal power companies, you have a power company. The bigger companies that are not municipals are ultimately regulated by the PSC. It's not we're not an unregulated state. So the PSC's vision is to ultimately go in and make sure that consumers are being treated fair, that rates are ultimately set and rate payers are not being gouged in their pricing. So it's an incredibly important role. It's something that I oversaw as Commerce Chair when it came from the policy and lawmaking side of the law. Now I'm going to go to the regulated side of things. So, one of my goals is to make sure that all regulations that are there are sensible, are in a place to where the consumers are treated fairly, and that utility providers can offer what we need more than anything, which is reliability. We go and flip a light switch on, or we flush a toilet. They know that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, but so much is happening behind the scenes, and we got to make sure that infrastructure is there, it's paid for, and we have long-term reliability. Of course, there will be some challenges coming out of COVID. Every industry and utility industry was not spared in this. Everyone has been affected by COVID somehow, some way. But I'm ready to jump in. I actually take office officially on January 2nd. So I'll be ready to jump in head first and take on all the challenges that are ultimately there. Of course, long term, there's our state is growing. So resiliency is going to be a very, very important factor. Of course, bringing in innovations and technology is going to be an important factor. What I tell folks most often is the next 10 years will look very different from the previous 10 years, especially at the growth rate that we're growing here in the state of Florida. So I look forward to those challenges that are there, ready to jump in and continue serving the public as I have over these past 8 years. And happy to help out our community still in any which way that we can.
Is this like the legislature, where is this now a full-time job? You have to leave your business, or are you able to do both?
Yeah, so it is certainly a full-time job, very different gig than or I shouldn't say gig, but different scenario than I had as a legislator. Of course, our Constitution says, legislators in Florida are part-time. Now, I know it says that. It's not truly a description of what of course, the time needed is. But you're expected to have some other real-world experience, or be involved in something else. As a PSC commissioner, it is 100% full-time. At the end of the day, I go back to why I applied to the PSC, and it started back in 2015. I actually ran a bill that reformed the PSC. Now, of course, it's law. It created term limits for PSC members. And it also required them to travel the state within their meetings, because what we were coming to find was that the consumer, the ratepayer, who doesn't really have a choice, obviously, in any of these selections when they move into a home or own a business, their utility providers are who their utility providers are, never had the opportunity to get in front of the PSC or talk about its issues. So we required that the PSC travel throughout the state, and this sounds almost silly, but in 2015 they didn't have any video of their meetings. So we required them to make those available and stream them live, so that consumers can ultimately understand what the PSC does and how they can get more involved. So I kind of started to take an understanding of what the PSC does then, and it's kind of closely stayed related to it. So the PSC does travel around. Of course, they're based in Tallahassee, which is where the majority of their business does. And I imagine, like I am currently in the legislature, am a part or will be a part of other organizations, some national organization, maybe even some global organizations that are energy related. I currently sit on the Southern States Energy Board, which is a group of states in the southeastern part of the United States that talk about what their energy issues are and talk about how they work through policy and so forth. And that's kind of been a pretty cool process to represent the state in that regard. So yeah, I'm ready for those. I know some commissioners currently do sit on other boards and do get involved, and I'll do the same. I'll continue to do that. I learn a lot, and man, when you communicate to others and start building relationships with others in other parts of the country, you just learn so much. You either try to avoid problems that they may have, or be able to resolve problems much faster by things that they've ultimately been able to tackle and accomplish. Again, thank you, John, for having me, and I appreciate all your support that the Chamber's given me literally since day one. You guys have been there for me, so I want to make sure I continue to be there for you guys.
Well, we appreciate you once again, and just a reminder to the audience, his comments on the PSC. We did do our webcast last week. It featured all of the utility partners inside of Osceola County, including Toho Water Authority, Duke Energy, OUC, and KUA. And so they do have assistance programs for folks who are in need right now. I know there's a lot of us still hurting. And so if you have any questions on your bill or need that help, either watch that blog or go to our website, get the contact information, because they are willing and able and desire to help everybody get through these tough times. So, and one of the things we talked about, Mike, on the utility panel was kind of the future of solar. And so a lot happening there, a lot happening in nuclear energy with Duke Energy last week at the PSC getting relieved. So I mentioned all that not to continue this conversation because I think we're at time, but to say I hope to have you back, and we can have another conversation about what's happening at the PSC and maybe what people need to know and how we can get engaged appropriately to help. So thanks for taking the time today. Thanks for your service in the legislature. We're excited for your service on the PSC, and we're glad to call you one of our homeboys. So thanks for all your sacrifice and public service. Thanks to all our members. You truly are champions, and we'll come back next week with some more information to help you through these times. Thanks for being with us.